afternoon, everyone. Uh, it's very interesting the way you started the day with Uday speaking about the three T's, Trump, tariff, and turbulence, and he spoke about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Then Srini spoke about how one of the key growth area for us is green energy. We had Shekhar speaking about energy security in India. And I'm Amit Jain, your host for this panel discussion, Partner Infrastructure Fund. It is my honor to bring this topic to you today, India's renewable energy landscape, what it takes to achieve 500 gigawatt by 2030. In today's world, which is changing faster than ever, the challenges and opportunities are shaping new things every passing day. And in today's agenda, we are going to deep dive into these shifts, uncover new trends, and look at what are the newer insights that are emerging out of this green energy investment theme. I'm very happy to have a panel of experts today who brings unique perspective to this table. On my left, we have Parag Sharma, CEO, O2 Power Private Limited. At the center, we have Avinash Rao, CEO, Sustainable Energy Investment Trust. We have the third panelist is Sonal Srivastava. She is CFO, Waaree Energy Limited. I've been very fortunate to see the green energy boom in India. And I still remember 2012 when we started meaningful investment in this area. We were very happy to do 1 gigawatt in a year. Come 2020, we were doing 1 gigawatt every 2 months. And people said, wow, it's great investment. In 2023, we did almost 1 gigawatt every month. And we said, is this the peak? Come last year, 2024, we did 1 gigawatt every fortnight. So that's kind of investment that is happening in this area. And as we go in the next 2 to 3 years, we are looking at creating 1 gigawatt of renewable capacity in India every week. So let me start with you, Parag. When you look at this inspirational target of 500 gigawatt, which is basically saying that renewable energy is going to be replacing thermal energy as base load, where do you see we are with respect to this target?
Look, today we are, so there's a bit of a confusion whether in renewables you add hydro or not. So if you leave about the hydro, then wind, solar itself is 15% of the total generation today. And if we are anywhere close to 500 gigawatt by 2030, this number will go to 25, 26%. And if we add hydro, then the number would be 35, 36. So it's a matter of time. We are slowly, right now it's 85, 15. We are moving towards 70, 30. And looking at the way things are moving, there has to be a more faster replacement of coal-based power plant by renewables. And just to give you numbers, as you rightly said, in calendar year 24, the solar capacity addition was double of what it was in calendar year 2023. This year, we are talking about adding 35 gigawatt of renewables, 30 of solar, 3.5 of wind, and then some small hydro also. So the pace at which we are growing, at 1 or 2 years back when somebody used to ask me whether can we really do 50 gigawatt a year to reach to 500 gigawatt, today I would say yes, we can. The two corporates in India, which is Adani and JSW, both have announced 50 gigawatt targets by FY30. So they themselves, two corporates themselves are adding 200 gigawatts. So it's looking very good right now.
And Avinash, I would like to prick your brains on this as well.
Well, I think all of us who've been in the renewable energy sector, Parag, me, since 2005-06, would like to believe that at some stage renewables will replace thermal. While capacity-wise, as you and Parag pointed out, it's very encouraging. There's a lot of capacity addition that is happening. Just to put some numbers in perspective, like we all know our economy is growing at about 6 to 7%. electricity growth is generally expected to tail our economic growth, right? And with the lowest per capita consumption even today, our electricity consumption is expected to leapfrog. Now, can renewables come in and completely replace thermal? I think we are quite some distance away. Again, to give put some numbers in perspective, just let's take February, March, the last 1 month, right? Give or take, and these numbers can change depending on which report you read. Our power consumption as a nation, on an average daily basis, last 1 month was about 5,000 million units, right? And out of that, 3,800 odd million units came from coal-based power plants. About 450 million units came from renewables, and about 250 came from hydro. So the gap is quite substantial. So there's still a long way to go. But does that mean that renewables is not the way to go? The answer is that is indeed the way to go. We have to reduce our carbon emissions. Where it helps in a very big way as a nation is that it helps us accelerate towards meeting our 2030 target of reducing our carbon emissions, meeting our INDC of reducing our carbon intensity by 45% of the 2005 levels. I think we are accelerating towards that. But if one were to say renewables will completely come and replace thermal, I think we are quite some distance away.
Interesting. Sonal, let me come to you. If you look at the capacity addition which is happening, like we are almost doubling every 3 years on the solar side, what are the key enablers that you see which will help us to push this capacity addition further from 25, 30 gigawatt to 50 gigawatt now over the next 3 to 4 years?
The way the sector has grown, what I would say is that it's all about energy security and Atmanirbhar Bharat, Trump and tariff notwithstanding, So how are we looking at it? I think my panelists spoke about the demand, and if you read any report from the government, they're talking about 500 gigawatts from renewables, and the overall about 770 kind of installed capacity for the energy sector per se. This is expected to take our consumption to something like 2,400 billion units, which is a 7% growth from here on. Now, this is absolutely required, because otherwise, as a country, we can't have the GDP numbers we are talking about. We can't meet some of the basic demands, and I say there's a latent demand which is not captured, actually. So how does the sector gear up for it, I think there are 2-3 things that is driving this, and sort of government has come up with the policies, when we're dealing from China, we are creating an alternative, different supply chain to China. Just up to COVID, 95% of the entire renewable, especially on the solar side, was coming from China. And then you had these policy enablements, I would call, for decoupling. And this is necessary if we really want to have an alternative supply chain to China. However, when we look at the tariffs and support coming, it's for the initial phase is what we see from the manufacturer's perspective. We feel we have to stand on our own feet and contribute as the sector goes up and matures. We have to be globally competitive. For India, all of this comes into play. We have to be globally competitive. We have to meet the energy demand. And I think we are pretty much geared up from all the policies that are supporting us, as well as looking for a landscape on what we do after the policies.
Understood. Yeah, I think broadly everybody is convinced that, okay, India as a country has power demand and we need 500 gigawatt. But one of the key concern from end users is the variable nature of renewable energy. And that's where storage plays a very important role. Luckily, India is at a position where storage costs have come down significantly from peak of $780 per kWh for an LFP battery pack. It has gone down by 90%. So India today is trying to mix solar, wind, and storage to ensure the transmission infrastructure is used properly. There are 2 ways it is going about it. One is the battery energy storage system, BESS way, and there is another is pump hydro storage system. Between the 2, Parag, which one excites you more, and where do you see the future?
Look, the BSS cost, as you rightly said, has fallen a lot. And whenever my team goes to China after every 6 months, they come up with a new number which looks very attractive. Uh, and, and, and the overall manufacturing capacity of China is almost 3 times the requirement of the whole world. So that's the kind of surplus which is going on in China, and we are the biggest beneficiary of it. And we are getting at a very, in fact, nowadays the numbers like for a battery pack, even at $50, $55, if you have 1,000 megawatt hours kind of a tender, is possible. So, and BSS is something which can be delivered in 6 months, and it's a market which is growing because of the fact that now both for mobility and for the stationary storage, it is the same technology, LFP, which is being used. So there are synergies between these 2 sectors. So looking at the speed at which we can install, looking at unless and until you require more than 4 hours of storage, BSS is coming out to be much cheaper than the pumped hydro storage. And the pumped hydro storage has so much of geological risk, the land-related requirements, the different nuances of a hydro sector, while this doesn't require so much of land and is far more efficient to install. So I would say that I would bet more for BSS rather than the long gestation pumped storage power plants.
Interesting. Avinash, any contrary view, or you would align with Parag on that?
No, I fully align. I think pump storage, there are limited sites, complexities that they bring, as Parag alluded to, are of a very different nature. The investors, would be far more comfortable with a simple BESS, I assume, as against very complex, environmentally sensitive pump storage projects. But purely looking at it from an INVIT lens, because we are expected to invest in low risk asset classes, we would still wait and watch for even the BESS cycles go through at least one phase of 1 or 2 years of operating history before we step in and start looking at it as an INVIT aggressively.
Good. Now we spoke about storage playing a role, and I think one of the other key element is domestic modules. So India as a country has done significant investment in solar module manufacturing, and I still remember in 2021 we had only 10 gigawatt of module manufacturing capacity in the country, and we were importing primarily from China. And over the last 3 years, we've made so much of investment, thanks to PLI scheme by the government as well, that we are at 60 gigawatt. And if I look at the current trend, we would be 100 gigawatt over next 2 to 3 years. The other piece which we are working is not only on the module side, but we want to make polysilicon to ingots, to wafers, to cell and modules in the entire value chain. Waaree has played a very significant role in moving this transition for India. So I would request Sonal if you could throw some light that is this still a dream, or you believe India is ready to reduce its China dependence significantly?
No, so it's playing out, like I said. There is about 100 gigawatts of capacity that we are going towards in module. Cell, so we are integrating backwards as well as an industry. So for cell, roughly about 18 gigawatts of capacity is already there, which is again expected to go up to 50 gigawatts. So cell also, various announcements and plans are there. And of course, there are players who have also sort of announced to go into ingot wafers. Nobody has talked about polysilicon, or I think 1 or 2 people, but that's still exploratory. There are many options for that in non-Chinese countries as well. So people producing like us, we plan to go into ingot and wafers. So we'll be sourcing our polysilicon non-China. So this plan is already there. I think all the elements are in place, government support, as well as, the approvals. It can move very fast. I just want to pick on the last 2 questions and really come back on this, that, Waaree has announced investment in battery as well. So we've announced 2,000 crore investment in batteries, about 3.5 gigawatt hours. We expect the demand to be 40 gigawatt hours plus. Now, why? Because as we look forward, where we feel that RE is going to become a significant part of the, the landscape, you need actually the full scale for managing the peak powers, Today, the peak power is managed by solar in the afternoon, and in the evening, it's mostly hydro, maybe a little bit of wind. But when you want to, sort of straddle not just the afternoons, but the evening, you need the storage capacity. And for that element, the manufacturers are looking at not just supply of modules, but the whole system, solution and system, how we offer it to the players so that, they can become more grid compatible.
Avinash, let me come to you from an InvIT perspective. When you look at solar projects with a proven technology, or I would say the Chinese plants which are there in India for a reasonably long period of time, with domestic module manufacturing now reasonably stable, do you have any concern on the quality or longevity of these modules, or you are equally comfortable with these modules for long-term investment in India?
I think our current portfolio already has modules with, for example, the Waaree make. The cells essentially still come from China for now. And from an InvIT perspective, when we acquire assets, we would anyway subject them to a very thorough due diligence. Whether it is Indian modules or Chinese modules does not make any difference. We will subject the asset, including those that come from our sponsors, to an in-depth diligence. Both modules will go through the same level of assessment, and if we are satisfied, then only we invest. Having said that, if I were to look at the performance of modules that are manufactured in India, at least so far in our portfolio, they are doing as well, if not better than the Chinese ones.
That's very comforting. If I were to look at the renewable story playing out in India, almost everything is getting into place. There are also a couple of concerns with respect to transmission infrastructure. So one, people are concerned that is the transmission infrastructure keeping pace with the supply getting added? And two, while there's so much of bidding happening, there are some issues with respect to PPA getting signed on time. So Parag, for a developer like you, how do you handle these two issues?
No, Amit, you very rightly picked up the two major pain points currently for our sector. If we talk about transmission system development, a lot has improved. So earlier, the situation was we used to apply for connectivity as a generator, and then the system developer used to collate such applications and then plan for the transmission network. So gone are those days. That used to take 5 years, 6 years, and we were always behind, running behind evacuation system. The new scheme, which was launched in 2022, when CA came out with a 500 gigawatt transmission plan, they said, look, these are the renewable pockets. They identified renewable pockets in India. And they said, irrespective of whether somebody applies or not, we are building a network which can carry 500 gigawatt of transmission network. Now, only problem in that whole thing, which is now hit the sector, is that too much more than expected has come out in certain regions. Nobody expected Rajasthan will cross so much. And that's why there's no connectivity available for the next 5 years in Rajasthan. Nobody expected Karnataka has some 37 gigawatt of C2 applications in wind. Nobody expected Karnataka will become. So there's been some imbalance with respect to forecast versus what was really planned to be evacuated. But government is very prompt in action. They are figuring out the way. In the interim, yes, we have to figure out some other solution. And one solution which government has already launched, and if you read the CRC 4th amendment of the GNA, what they are now saying is that solar connectivity means only from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The same solar connectivity can be used in the evening hours by some other source. So they are in the existing network, they are trying to figure out how best we can utilize the network. And I would say that 40 gigawatt hour target of storage that CA has given will get used even faster the way the number of bits are coming up on storage. So that is what transmission is. There are solutions which are getting found, and I'm pretty sure we will solve it. The bigger problem is PPAs. We all are, as an IPP, carrying with us a lot of papers which are called LOAs. And our investors say, look, this is a capital which you have already blocked. So first deliver this, then we will fund you more. But we know that unless and until PPA gets signed, we can't really invest something on it. Now, this absolutely should not have been a challenge if our distribution licensees would have been more planned in terms of their power procurement. So they will procure power almost at the end. They need a lot of pushing to procure more power. So that trend is yet to change, and that's why all the REIAs in the center, they are finding it difficult to push the power that they have already procured. And sometimes distribution licensees believe that, look, the next bid will be cheaper, let me wait for it. So we as an industry bodies have suggested that why don't you make a plan which says that if you are signing the PPAs before June, which was the deadline for ISTS charges waiver, then that distribution licensees will have a waiver of ISTS charges. The second suggestion that we gave is that, look, in the last budget, states can borrow 0.5% of the GSTP state budget higher if they meet certain norms of the central government. So in that norms, if RPO gets added and whoever is meeting the RPO guidelines, they can borrow 0.5% more. That could be the second strategy. So they have to solve, but not to blame them. India suddenly increased the number of bids from 15, 20 gigawatts a year to 50 gigawatts. So it has to have, we have to give industry some time to really cool down whatever are the existing PPAs. But yeah, the good thing is that bidding is not slowing down. It is still continuing at a pace of 50 gigawatt, and if you talk to PMO or anybody, they are very confident that they will be able to solve this.
Understood. So Parag seems to be very convinced that this 50 gigawatt is something that we are going to do it. It's a transition time in terms of these PPA issue getting resolved. Avinash, let me come to you. You know, InvIT has been one of the most favored topic for the last 5 years, both from an overseas investor and domestic investors. We have more than 20 active InvITs and REITs in the country today, sitting on AUM of $60 billion plus and raised equity of about 12 billion plus. Now, since we need so much of capital, if I look at the InvIT side, the road InvITs have done really well, but on the renewable side, we only have a couple of players coming in. How do you see renewable InvIT play in raising capital for this sector?
Early days for renewables on the InvIT side. And, in fact, there is only one pure play renewable energy InvIT, which is ours. We have two other peers of mine, which is Integrid and Enzen. They are transmission come renewable InvITs, largely transmission, but they're doing renewables, some portion of renewables. And the reason for this legacy is there are two things that are important for InvIT to succeed. One is a very steady revenue line and a cost base, so that there is, you can forecast your yields and investors know that they are sort of likely to receive a very stable yield. And second is a very steady supply of good quality, low risk projects, because InvIT is a AAA rated paper. So from that perspective, when you look at roads, both of this was available. There were annuity projects initially. There are developers, and then there are NHAI who sort of made available operating assets that was sort of required for the InvITs to prosper and blossom. That happened with roads, and that's why you will see out of the 19-20 InvITs, a majority of them are road InvITs. The second thing is we moved to transmission, which is an adjacency, very similar to roads. Again, very stable revenue line. Therefore, you saw the first one or two InvITs that came into the energy space. In fact, three of them, including Power Grid, were largely transmission InvITs, where there was a very clear visibility on revenue line. One place where they started struggling after a point in time was the second issue, which is a supply of assets. And that's why you saw them migrate gradually into renewables. Now, coming back to renewables, I think where we lagged as a sort of the InvIT community was the steady supply of assets and a decent understanding of how do we ensure a very stable revenue line, because by nature renewables is is a up and down business from a resource perspective. I think that issue is now reasonably well understood, that if you get your energy assessment right, your revenue line is going to be pretty stable. That understanding is there now in the market. The second issue that a lot of sponsors of InvITs are grappling with is when you have to sort of, unlike roads where you don't have ready-made, a SECI or somebody doling out assets here, people who invested in renewables were largely either strategics or private equity funds. Strategics will continue to hold their assets, and private equity funds will want to churn their capital very quickly, right? And with an InvIT, you actually necessarily have to be a sponsor of the InvIT. You will have to hold that InvIT as a sponsor for a particular period of time. That was proving to be a challenge. Then you have to have two management teams, one at the DevCo, one at the OpCo. So all of those challenges were something that people were grappling with. I think Mahindra Group and Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, which are the sponsors to our InvIT, have taken the first step. And I know as we speak, quite a few other developers are really interested, given there's a lot of pension money, sovereign money, and provident fund money chasing InvIT, steady state money. So we should see more InvITs now in the energy space going forward.
Interesting. And let me come to the last question. Is if you look at from an investment perspective, India is looking at close to about $200 billion of investment in renewable energy generation, another $150 billion of investment in storage, module, and transmission. InvIT was one part of the capital pool that was available. So Sonal, from your perspective, because since you are in the entire value chain, including development, which are the other sources of capital that you are looking at in order to meet this growing capital requirement?
So I think the capital intensity is at the generation stage, So manufacturing, you can pretty much manage with, a little bit of equity, a little internal accruals, and, debt wherever needed. On the generation side, we are a new entrant. We are sort of actually going to be developing some asset early stage and making it, ready for some developer who wants to come and take it to the next step and eventually have more stability for the InvIT guys. So we want to take the development risk, actually. So here we are looking out to the early stage private capital, actually, who are not the yield kind of guys, who will sort of ride with us on the development part, because we are the sponsors, we will be taking the risk, which is really essentially on the land and on the connectivity, and maybe signing the PPAs as well. And plus we can do the whole thing. So, we can also give modules, we can do EPC, now we have storage. So, we kind of make the whole infrastructure ready for anybody to come in. So this part, we are looking for private capital, actually. That's international, domestic, both. And of course, the others I will leave it to.
Yeah. So Parag, your thoughts on this, just to conclude?
I think in early 2010 and 11, only the PE money was chasing renewables. So right now, if you see, there's a lot of capital coming from business houses, Indian business houses. We have a good public market which is available, couple of InvITs which are already there, more are expected. So I see the avenues of raising funds have increased in the last 10 years.
Great. Thank you for this very insightful discussion. And I think India as a country is in the cusp of unprecedented investment in renewable space, and we are all set to become the renewable capital of the world outside China. And I think I'm very excited to be part of this journey. So thank you so much for this insight.